Story number 1. Footprints in the snow. I've always been drawn to the untouched majesty of the Himalayas, where the air is thin, and the world feels both vast and intimate. As an avid mountaineer and a writer seeking inspiration, the allure of scaling peaks and delving into the mysteries of ancient legends was irresistible. So when my friends Tom, Sarah, and Mike decided to join me on an expedition to explore the lesser-known trails of the Everest region, I was eager to embrace the adventure and the stories that lay hidden in the snowy expanse. We set out in late November, well prepared for the harsh conditions that the Himalayas are infamous for. Our team was small but experienced, each of us bringing unique skills to the table. Tom, the group's leader, was a seasoned climber with a knack for navigation. Sarah, a geologist, had an insatiable curiosity for the Earth's hidden secrets. Mike, our medic, ensured that we were always prepared for any medical emergencies. As for me, I was the chronicler, documenting our journey and capturing the essence of our experiences through words and photographs. The first few days were exhilarating. We trekked through pristine forests blanketed in snow, the silence broken only by the crunch of our boots and the distant call of Himalayan birds. The trails were challenging but manageable, winding their way through rugged terrain that tested our endurance and teamwork. Each night, we settled into our tents under a canopy of stars, sharing stories and dreams by the flickering light of our campfires. On the fourth day, as we ascended higher into the mountain range, the weather began to take a menacing turn. Dark clouds rolled in from the west, and the temperature dropped sharply. Tom, ever the pragmatist, decided to push forward, believing that we could reach our next checkpoint before the storm hit. Reluctantly, the rest of us agreed, trusting his judgment and hoping for the best. As dusk settled, the sky darkened, and the wind picked up, howling through the narrow valleys like the cries of lost souls. We reached a narrow ridge that offered a breathtaking view of the surrounding peaks, their jagged silhouettes etched against the stormy sky. It was there that we first noticed the footprints, massive, unlike anything we had seen before, etched deeply into the soft snow. They were enormous, with an unmistakable humanoid shape but far larger than any humans. The realization sent a chill down my spine. But Tom dismissed it as the work of an unusually large animal, perhaps a bear. That night, the storm unleashed its full fury. Snow fell in relentless sheets, reducing visibility to almost nothing. Inside our tent, the wind howled like a living beast, rattling the fabric and shaking our shelter. We huddled together, trying to stay warm and keep our spirits up despite the mounting fear. It was then that we heard it, a faint, rhythmic pounding outside our tent, like heavy footsteps pacing back and forth across the ridge. Probably just the wind or some animal trying to get in, Tom whispered, though his voice lacked conviction. But the pounding continued, growing louder and more deliberate, as if someone or something was searching for us. Sarah clutched her sleeping bag tighter, her eyes wide with fear. "Do you guys hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling. We sat in tense silence, listening as the footsteps circled our tent, never approaching too closely but persistent enough to keep us on edge. The sound seemed to blend with the storm, creating an eerie symphony of nature and something else, something unearthly. At around 3 a.m., the pounding stopped abruptly, plunging us back into an oppressive silence. We tried to sleep, but the fear lingered, making it impossible to relax. When dawn broke, the storm had subsided, leaving the landscape transformed into a winter wonderland. The footprints were still visible, leading away from our tent and disappearing into the dense forest. Determined to uncover the truth, we decided to investigate, armed with our gear and a sense of cautious curiosity. We followed the trail, the footprints guiding us deeper into the wilderness. The forest was thick with snow-laden pines, the air crisp and biting. Hours passed as we trekked through the silent expanse, the only sounds our footsteps and the occasional crack of ice underfoot. Just as fatigue began to set in, we stumbled upon an old, dilapidated cabin nestled between two towering trees. Its windows were boarded up, and the door hung crookedly on its hinges, creaking softly in the wind. The footprints had led us here, as if beckoning us to uncover the secrets that lay within. Tom pushed open the door, and we stepped inside cautiously, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. The cabin was cold and musty, the remnants of a bygone era scattered around rusted tools, broken furniture, and old photographs that had yellowed with age. In the center of the room stood a large wooden desk, its surface cluttered with papers and maps. Among them, we found a journal weathered and fragile, yet the ink remained legible. As I began to read, the story of the cabin unfolded before us. It belonged to a family of miners who had settled in the area during the late 1800s, hoping to strike it rich in the mountains. But tragedy struck one fateful winter when a brutal storm trapped them in the cabin. Supplies dwindled, and desperation set in. In a horrific turn of events, the family succumbed to the elements. Their bodies never recovered, leaving the cabin to become a haunting reminder of their untimely demise. The journal detailed the family's struggle, their hope turning to despair as the storm raged on. The final entry was a frantic plea for help, the ink smeared by tears and snow. It was then that the legend of the Yeti began to take shape, fueled by the family's fear of an unseen presence stalking them in the darkness. Suddenly, the temperature in the cabin dropped, and a heavy silence enveloped us. The door slammed shut, and the sound of footsteps echoed through the room, mirroring the pounding we had heard the night before. We turned to face the source, only to see a shadowy figure standing at the edge of the room, his presence both menacing and sorrowful. "Leave this place," the apparition intoned, its voice a ghostly echo that sent chills down my spine. We froze, unable to move as the figure glided towards us, its eyes empty and void of any warmth. Tom took a step forward, his voice steady despite the fear gripping him. "We mean no harm. We just want to understand what happened here." The spirit paused, his form wavering like mist in the wind. "Help us find peace," it whispered, the plea evident in its hollow gaze. "Only then can we move on, understanding the depth of their suffering." We knew that our encounter was more than a mere ghost story. It was a call to honor their memory and bring closure to restless souls trapped by tragedy. Determined to help, we decided to perform a ritual of remembrance, hoping to offer forgiveness and solace to the spirits that haunted the mountains. We gathered our belongings, setting up candles and placing offerings around the cabin, the flickering flames casting a warm glow against the cold darkness. As we spoke words of remembrance and forgiveness, the atmosphere in the cabin began to shift, the oppressive cold lifting as if the spirits were finally finding the peace they had long been denied. The apparition of the father figure reappeared, his expression now one of gratitude and relief. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice filled with genuine emotion. "You've set us free." With those final words, the spirits of the family began to fade, their forms dissolving into the light of the rising sun that filtered through the broken windows. The cabin, once a place of sorrow and despair, now stood as a beacon of peace and remembrance amidst the snowy wilderness. As we made our way back to our tent, the footprints that had led us into the heart of the mystery were gone, replaced by a serene stillness that spoke of closure and acceptance. The legend of the Yeti, once shrouded in fear and uncertainty, now held a deeper meaning, a testament to the enduring power of compassion and the belief that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope for redemption and peace. Years have passed since that transformative winter in the Himalayas, and the memory of our encounter remains etched in my mind. The footprints on the snow are now just whispers of a past that refuse to be forgotten, a haunting reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead. Whenever I traverse the snowy trails of the Himalayas, the echoes of that night resonate within me, a silent tribute to the spirits we helped to set free and the bonds that connect us all, transcending even the most relentless storms. Living with the memory of that night has taught me that some places hold secrets too profound to be left untouched. their stories demanding to be heard and honored. By facing the darkness with empathy and understanding, we can bridge the gap between our world and the spirits that linger in the shadows, offering them the peace they seek and ensuring that their tales are never forgotten. And sometimes, when the wind rustles through the Himalayan pines and the snow blankets the land in silence, I catch a glimpse of a faint shadow or hear the distant echo of a family's laughter, a silent testament to the enduring hope for redemption and peace, even amidst the towering peaks of the world's highest mountains. Story number 2. Echoes of the White Beast. I've always been captivated by the untamed wilderness of Alaska, where the land stretches endlessly into the horizon, and the silence is broken only by the whisper of the wind and the crunch of snow underfoot. As an avid outdoorsman and freelance writer, the allure of exploring these remote areas was irresistible. So, when I decided to take a solo expedition into the heart of the Alaskan wilderness, little did I know that I was about to encounter a nightmare that would forever change my perception of nature and the unknown. It was late November, and the first signs of winter were beginning to take hold. The air was crisp, and the landscape was transforming into a vast expanse of white. I had chosen a secluded area known for its stunning beauty and challenging terrain, a place where few dared to venture. My plan was simple: hike deep into the wilderness, document the untouched beauty, and return before the harshest part of winter set in. The first few days of my journey were everything I had hoped for. I trekked through dense forests blanketed in snow, crossed frozen streams, and marveled at the majestic peaks that pierced the sky. The solitude was peaceful, and the connection with nature was profound. But as I ventured further into the wilderness, the weather began to shift. Dark clouds loomed overhead, and the temperature dropped sharply, a sign that a severe storm was brewing. On the third day, as I made my way through a particularly dense thicket, I stumbled upon the remnants of an old hunting camp. Weathered tents, rusted tools, and scattered supplies told the story of those who had once sought refuge in these unforgiving lands. Intrigued, I decided to investigate, documenting the signs of past habitation. It was then that I noticed something peculiar: large, deep footprints imprinted into the fresh snow. Unlike anything I had seen before, they were enormous, humanoid in shape but far larger, with a depth that suggested immense weight. I followed the trail, curiosity overcoming any hint of fear. The footprints led me deeper into the forest, toward a narrow canyon that I had avoided earlier due to its treacherous terrain. As I navigated the rugged path, the sky darkened ominously, and the wind began to howl like a chorus of restless spirits. The first flakes of snow began to fall, quickly escalating into a relentless blizzard that reduced visibility to almost nothing. I knew I had to find shelter, so I pushed forward, the footprints guiding me like a spectral beacon through the storm. After what felt like hours battling the elements, I spotted a faint light through the swirling snow. It was a small, isolated cabin, standing defiantly against the fury of the storm. Relief washed over me as I made my way toward it, the cold seeping into my bones with every step. The cabin was old, its wooden frame battered by years of harsh winters. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding with a mix of hope and apprehension. The door creaked as I pushed it open, revealing an empty interior that seemed frozen in time. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of wood smoke and decay. I settled in for the night, grateful for the temporary refuge from the storm. As midnight approached, the storm reached its peak, the wind howling like a beast in pain. I tried to ignore the eerie silence that had settled over the cabin, but a growing sense of unease began to gnaw at me. It was then that I heard it, a faint, rhythmic pounding coming from the back of the cabin. My heart raced as I grabbed my flashlight and cautiously approached the source of the noise. The hallway was dark, the only light emanating from the flickering bulb overhead. The pounding continued, growing louder and more insistent, as if someone or something was desperately trying to get out. I pushed open the door to the back room, my flashlight cutting through the darkness to reveal an empty space. save for an old wooden table covered in dust and cobwebs. Confused and unnerved, I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut with a force that shook the cabin. Panic surged through me as I banged on the door, shouting for help, but only the storm answered. I backed away, trying to regain my composure, when the pounding ceased abruptly, replaced by a low, mournful howl that seemed to resonate from the very walls of the cabin. My flashlight flickered, casting long, wavering shadows that danced menacingly around the room. I heard footsteps approaching, slow and deliberate, as if someone were pacing back and forth just out of sight. The air grew colder, my breath visible in the frigid room. The footsteps drew nearer, and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread, the fear of the unknown pressing down on me like an icy weight. Suddenly, a shadowy figure materialized at the doorway, its form barely discernible against the darkness. The figure was enormous, its silhouette humanoid but clearly not human. Its eyes were wide and hollow, reflecting a deep, unending sorrow. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest, as the figure moved toward me with a deliberate, almost methodical pace. The room seemed to grow smaller, the walls closing in as the presence of the beast filled the space. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer, my voice barely a whisper. The creature stopped, its gaze fixed on me with an intensity that made my blood run cold. It raised a massive hand, pointing toward the window, where the storm raged on unabated. "Leave this place," it seemed to convey, the message clear despite the lack of sound. "This is my domain." Terrified, I turned to flee, but the door remained firmly shut, the storm outside becoming an impenetrable barrier. The creature advanced, each step shaking the floorboards beneath me. Desperation clawed at my throat as I searched for a way out, but the cabin offered no escape. The creature loomed over me, its presence suffocating, its eyes filled with an eternal sadness that seemed to pierce through my very soul. In a final act of desperation, I reached out, my fingers trembling as they made contact with the icy surface of the creature's hand. A surge of energy coursed through me, a connection that transcended fear and pain. Images flashed before my eyes, visions of the past, of the creature's tragic existence. I saw it once human, a man driven to madness by isolation and loss, transformed by the harshness of the wilderness into a being of pure anguish. The realization hit me hard. This was no ordinary creature, but a spirit bound to the land, its existence a tragic testament to the unforgiving nature of the Alaskan wilderness. The storm outside began to abate, the wind's fury subsiding as if recognizing my understanding and empathy. With a final, sorrowful glance, the creature began to fade, its form dissolving into the cold air like mist in the morning sun. The oppressive darkness lifted, replaced by a gentle stillness that filled the cabin with a sense of peace. The door swung open effortlessly, revealing the calm aftermath of the storm outside. Exhausted and emotionally drained, I stepped out into the serene landscape, the memory of the encounter etched into my mind forever. The next morning, I made my way back to civilization, the footprints of the creature still visible in the fresh snow, leading deep into the wilderness but disappearing without a trace. The local authorities were baffled, finding nothing out of the ordinary except for the mysterious footprints and the abandoned cabin that had been forgotten by time. The story of my encounter became a whispered legend among the locals, adding another layer to the already rich folklore of the region. Years have passed since that fateful night in the Alaskan wilderness, but the memory of the white beast remains vivid in my mind. The experience taught me the profound impact of isolation and the thin veil that separates our world from the supernatural. It's a haunting reminder that even in the most beautiful and serene landscapes, darkness can linger, waiting to reveal its secrets to those brave enough to seek them. Whenever I find myself yearning for solitude, the call of the wilderness is irresistible. Yet I carry with me the lessons learned from that night. The mountains hold stories too powerful to be forgotten, their echoes lingering in the winds and whispers of the snow. And as long as we remember and honor the tales of those who came before us, Their spirits will continue to guide us. Their whispers a haunting yet beautiful melody that echoes through the ages. And sometimes, when a storm rolls in and the winds howl through the pines, I catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure in the distance or hear the faint echo of a sorrowful howl, a silent testament to the bonds that connect us all and the healing that comes from empathy and understanding. Story number 3. Shadows on the Summit. I've always been drawn to the remote and unforgiving beauty of the Colorado Rockies. The towering peaks, blanketed in snow, offer a solitude that's both exhilarating and humbling. So, when my wife, Laura, and I decided to embark on a winter hiking expedition, it felt like the perfect escape from the chaos of our everyday lives. Little did we know, the mountains had their own secrets that would plunge us into a nightmare we couldn't have imagined. Our journey began on a crisp December morning, the sun casting a pale glow over the snow-covered landscape. Equipped with sturdy gear, maps, and a camera to capture the pristine wilderness, we set out with high spirits. The trail was challenging, winding through dense forests and ascending steep inclines, but the sense of adventure kept us moving forward. By midday, we reached a secluded area known for its breathtaking vistas and tranquil environment. The air was thin, each breath a reminder of the altitude, and the silence was profound, broken only by the occasional call of a distant bird or the whisper of the wind through the pines. We found a perfect spot to set up our base camp, pitching our tent and preparing a simple meal before dark. As night fell, the temperature plummeted, and the first snowflakes began to fall, transforming the landscape into a glittering wonderland. We sat by the campfire, sharing stories and savoring the warmth, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on our faces. Laura pulled out her camera, eager to capture the magic of the winter night. "Let me take a few shots of the stars," she said, adjusting the lens with practiced ease. The sky was clear, the constellations brilliantly visible against the inky blackness. We took turns photographing the celestial display, the camera clicks blending harmoniously with the crackling fire. About an hour into the night, a sudden gust of wind stirred the flames, sending sparks flying into the air. Laura glanced up, her eyes scanning the horizon. That's when she noticed something, a fleeting shadow moving against the backdrop of the mountains. "Did you see that?" she whispered, pointing towards the dense forest bordering our campsite. I squinted, trying to make out the figure amidst the swirling snow. At first, it looked like a trick of the light, perhaps an animal seeking shelter. But as I adjusted my focus, the outline became more defined, massive, with a silhouette that seemed almost human, yet far too large to be anything familiar. "Probably just a bear or something," I replied, though uncertainty gnawed at me, determined to capture the moment. Laura readied her camera, zooming in on the mysterious figure. The shutter clicked, freezing the image into my memory. Later, as we reviewed the photos, we were stunned by what we saw, a blurry but unmistakable depiction of a colossal, white-furred creature standing just beyond the tree line. "What the hell is that?" Laura exclaimed, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and fascination. Before I could respond, a deep, guttural growl echoed through the night, sending a shiver down my spine. The ground beneath us seemed to tremble as heavy footsteps pounded against the snow, circling our camp. My heart raced as I grabbed my flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness in search of the source. "We need to move," I urged, my voice barely steady. "Now." We hurriedly packed our gear, the sounds growing louder and more menacing. As we approached the tent, the pounding intensified, each step resonating with a terrifying power. I swung the tent flap open, the bitter cold whipping into the shelter. There was no one there, only the relentless storm outside and the fading echoes of the creature's approach. Just as we thought the worst was over, Laura gasped, pointing to the snow-covered ground surrounding our campsite. Large, deep footprints marred the pristine snow, leading away from the tent and disappearing into the darkness of the forest. "They're huge," she whispered, her voice shaking. Like nothing I've ever seen before. Panic surged through me. The legend of the Yeti, the elusive Bigfoot of the Himalayas, had always been dismissed as folklore. Yet, here we were, evidence of a creature that defied all explanations. We have to leave, I insisted, grabbing Laura's hand. Now! We sprinted through the snow, the footprints serving as a chilling reminder of the presence that hunted us. The storm showed no signs of abating, the wind howling like a chorus of the damned, and visibility was near zero. Every shadow seemed to conceal a threat, every gust of wind carrying whispers of unseen horrors. Hours felt like an eternity as we navigated the treacherous terrain, the footprints guiding us deeper into the wilderness. Exhaustion and fear clawed at our minds, the weight of our ordeal pressing down on us. Just when hope seemed lost, we stumbled upon a narrow trail that led us back towards civilization. With renewed determination, we followed the path, the footprints fading behind us as the storm began to weaken. The first light of dawn broke through the clouds, revealing the devastation left in the wake of the night's terror. We emerged from the wilderness, bruised and battered, but alive. The next day, we contacted the local authorities, sharing our terrifying experience and the evidence we had captured. The photographs and footprints were met with skepticism, but the search teams found no trace of the creature, no sign of our missing companion who had disappeared into the storm hours before. In the weeks that followed, our story spread, reigniting the legends of the Yeti in the Colorado Rockies. Experts were baffled, debunking the existence of such a creature. But the footprints and our chilling account persisted, adding a new chapter to the age-old folklore. Years later, the memory of that harrowing night remains vivid in my mind, a testament to the thin veil between myth and reality. The mountains hold secrets that defy understanding, and sometimes, in the heart of a raging storm, those secrets come alive, reminding us of the wild and untamed forces that still roam the earth. Whenever I drive past the Colorado Rockies, the vast, snow-covered peaks stretching endlessly before me, I can't help but feel a lingering sense of unease. The legend of the Yeti lives on, a haunting reminder of the night we faced the unknown and survived to tell the tale. And sometimes, when the wind howls through the pines and the snow blankets the land in silence, I catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure or hear the distant echo of heavy footsteps, a silent testament to the bonds that connect us all and the enduring mysteries that lie hidden in the heart of the wilderness. Living with the memory of that night has taught me to respect the untamed beauty of nature and the legends that are born from its depths. It's a reminder that some stories are too powerful to be forgotten, their echoes lingering in the winds and whispers of the mountains. And as long as we remember and honor the tales of those who came before us, the spirits of the past will continue to guide us. Their whispers a haunting yet beautiful melody that echoes through the ages. Story number 4. Shadows in the Siberian Wilderness. I've always been fascinated by the untouched expanses of Siberia, where the cold bites deeper and the silence is so profound it feels almost tangible. As a seasoned explorer and writer, the allure of documenting the unknown drew me to these remote forests, where legends whispered through the trees and the wind carried secrets of the past. But nothing could have prepared me for the chilling encounter that awaited my team and me during our expedition in the winter of 1983. Our mission was straightforward: to survey the uncharted territories of the Siberian taiga, mapping out new trails and studying the elusive wildlife that called this frozen wilderness home. The team consisted of 4 members. Myself, Elena, a geologist with an unparalleled knowledge of the region's mineral wealth. Victor, a wildlife biologist whose expertise lay in tracking and studying rare species. And Dmitri, our seasoned navigator and survival expert. Together, we ventured deep into the heart of the forest, driven by a shared passion for discovery and the promise of uncovering something extraordinary. The first few days were a testament to our preparation and teamwork. We navigated through thick forests blanketed in snow, crossed frozen rivers, and set up camp in secluded clearings where the only sounds were the crunch of our boots and the distant call of birds. The isolation was both exhilarating and humbling, reminding us of the raw power and beauty of nature. On the 5th day, as we trekked deeper into the wilderness, the weather began to change ominously. Dark clouds rolled in from the east, and the temperature plummeted rapidly. Victor checked his instruments and frowned. "We need to find shelter," he said, his voice tinged with concern. "A storm is brewing, and it's moving in fast." We hurriedly set up our tents near a cluster of ancient pine trees, hoping to find some protection against the impending storm. As dusk settled, the first flakes of snow began to fall, quickly intensifying into a blinding blizzard that reduced visibility to mere feet. The wind howled through the trees, carrying with it a sense of foreboding that sent shivers down our spines. Nightfall brought with it an eerie silence, broken only by the relentless assault of the storm. We huddled together in our tents, the warmth of our gear providing a small comfort against the bitter cold. Hours passed in restless sleep, the storm's fury unabated. That's when the unthinkable happened. Around midnight, Elena was jolted awake by a loud crash outside her tent. She grabbed her flashlight and cautiously stepped out, the snow swirling around her like a living entity. "Guys, come quick," she called, her voice trembling. We emerged from our shelters to find our campsite in disarray. Tents ripped open, supplies scattered, and the snow trampled in chaotic patterns. Victor pointed to the ground, his eyes wide with fear. "Look at these footprints," he whispered. They were enormous, humanoid in shape but far larger than any humans. The depth and size suggested immense weight, and they led away from the campsite, disappearing into the thick forest. "What in God's name?" Dmitri muttered, his face pale as he examined the prints. "These can't be human." Panic set in as we realized we were not alone. The storm had intensified, the wind howling louder, as if echoing our fear. Determined to find answers, we decided to follow the footprints, hoping to discover the source of the disturbance. Each step into the forest felt heavier, the snow crunching under our boots, masking any sounds that might give away the creature's presence. As we ventured deeper, the forest seemed to close in around us, the trees towering like silent sentinels against the storm. The footprints led us to a clearing, where the moonlight struggled to penetrate the dense canopy. In the center stood a figure, a massive, hulking shape covered entirely in white fur, its eyes hollow and filled with an otherworldly sorrow. "Elena, don't move," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the storm. But she didn't listen. Her eyes were locked on the creature, a mix of fear and fascination in her gaze. The creature remained motionless for a moment before it let out a low, mournful howl that resonated through the clearing. The ground beneath us seemed to tremble, the air thick with an oppressive energy that made it difficult to breathe. Victor clutched his rifle, his hands shaking uncontrollably. "We need to get out of here," he urged, but our path was blocked by the creature's immense presence. Suddenly, the storm began to abate, the wind dying down and the snow settling into a heavy silence. The creature took a step forward, its movements slow and deliberate. It raised a massive hand, pointing towards the dense forest behind us. "Leave this place," it seemed to convey, its voice a haunting echo in our minds. With hearts pounding and adrenaline surging, we turned and fled, the footprints behind us now gone without a trace. The forest was alive with a sinister energy, every shadow seeming to conceal a lurking threat. We pushed ourselves harder, the fear of the unknown driving us forward through the treacherous terrain. As dawn broke, the storm had passed, leaving the forest in a serene but deceptive calm. Exhausted and shaken, we made our way back to our campsite, only to find it eerily untouched by the earlier chaos. There were no signs of struggle, no torn tents or scattered supplies, only the footprints that led away into the forest. Determined to uncover the truth, we returned to the nearest town, our minds haunted by the night's events. The local authorities were skeptical, dismissing our account as a combination of exhaustion and the storm's disorienting effects. But as we recounted our experience, a local elder approached us, his eyes clouded with memories. "You speak of the white beast," he said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "A spirit bound to these lands, a guardian corrupted by tragedy. Many have seen it during storms, but few have survived the encounter." He explained that the white beast was believed to be the spirit of a miner who had perished in a tragic avalanche years ago. Driven mad by isolation and loss, his spirit had transformed into the colossal creature we had witnessed, forever guarding the wilderness against intruders. "We must honor his memory," he advised, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Only then can his spirit find peace, and the forest be free from his torment." Determined to help, we returned to the wilderness armed with candles, offerings, and a deep respect for the lost soul that haunted the forests. We set up a memorial in the clearing where we had encountered the beast, lighting candles and placing personal mementos as a gesture of remembrance and forgiveness. As we performed the ritual, the air grew warmer, the oppressive energy lifting as if the spirit was finally finding the closure it had long been denied. The footprints faded from the snow, replaced by a serene stillness that enveloped the clearing. The white beast appeared one last time, its form now peaceful and free from the anguish that had tormented it for so long. "Thank you," the spirit whispered, his voice filled with gratitude. With a final, sorrowful gaze, he vanished into the light of the rising sun, leaving behind a forest that felt both alive and tranquil. Driving away from the wilderness, the memory of that night lingered, a haunting reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead. The experience had taught me the profound impact of empathy and the importance of honoring those who had been lost to time. The legend of the white beast remained, now tempered with a sense of hope and redemption, a testament to the enduring power of compassion. Years have passed since that transformative winter in the Siberian wilderness, but the story of the white beast continues to echo through the mountains. Locals still speak of the spirit that guards the forest, a reminder of the tragedy that binds the past to the present. And sometimes, when the wind rustles through the pines and the snow blankets the land in silence, I catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure or hear the distant echo of a sorrowful howl, a silent testament to the bonds that connect us all and the healing that comes from remembering and honoring the stories of those who have been lost. Living with the memory of that night has instilled in me a deep respect for the untamed wilderness and the spirits that dwell within. It's a reminder that some places hold secrets too powerful to be forgotten, their echoes lingering in the winds and whispers of the mountains. And as long as we remember and honor the tales of those who came before us, their spirits will continue to guide us, their whispers a haunting yet beautiful melody that echoes through the ages. Story number 5. Shadows over Donner Pass. I've always been fascinated by the tales that emerge from the darkest corners of history, where survival instincts clash with the supernatural. Donner Pass, nestled in the Sierra Nevada of California, is one such place. Its snow-covered peaks and treacherous trails have long been the backdrop for one of America's most harrowing survival stories, the Donner Party. But beyond the documented tragedy lies a series of chilling accounts that few dare to speak of openly. This is the story of my encounter with the shadows that still haunt Donner Pass. It was early December, and the first whispers of winter were already making their presence felt. I was an investigative journalist with a penchant for uncovering the untold stories of the past, and Donner Pass had always intrigued me. The legend of the Donner Party, families stranded by a relentless snowstorm, resorting to unimaginable measures to survive, was well documented. Yet, the local folklore spoke of something more sinister, something that roamed the pass during the fiercest of storms. Driven by curiosity and the promise of a groundbreaking story, I decided to spend a week in the area, documenting first-hand accounts and exploring the desolate trails that the Donner Party once tread. My companion on this expedition was Mark, a seasoned mountaineer who knew the terrain like the back of his hand. Together, We set out in the late fall, our equipment packed meticulously for the harsh conditions we were likely to face. The first few days were uneventful, albeit challenging. We navigated through dense forests blanketed in snow, crossed frozen streams, and set up camp in secluded clearings where the silence was both comforting and eerie. As night fell, we would sit by the fire, sharing stories of past expeditions and speculating about the legends surrounding Donner Pass. On the third night, a severe snowstorm rolled in unexpectedly, far earlier than any forecast had predicted. The wind howled through the pines, and snowflakes swirled like spectral dancers in the darkness. Mark and I decided to seek shelter in an old ranger station we had come across earlier. It was a sturdy wooden building, seemingly untouched by time, with windows reinforced against the biting cold. As we settled in, the storm outside intensified, the howling wind seeming to press against the walls with a malevolent force. The ranger station was equipped with basic amenities, but the isolation was palpable. Around midnight, just as we were trying to drift off to sleep, I heard a faint, rhythmic pounding coming from the back of the building. "Mark, did you hear that?" I whispered, my heart pounding in my chest. He nodded, his face pale in the dim light. "Probably just the storm causing some loose parts to fall. Let's check it out." Grabbing our flashlights, we cautiously made our way towards the source of the noise. The back door was slightly ajar, the howling wind creating eerie sounds as it passed through the gap. We pushed the door open, the gust of wind sending a shiver down my spine. The pounding continued, louder now, emanating from the storage room just beyond the entrance. We approached the door, and as I reached out to turn the handle, the pounding stopped abruptly. The sudden silence was deafening, the oppressive atmosphere weighing heavily on us. Mark gave a nervous chuckle, trying to lighten the mood. "Probably just the wind. Let's go back inside." But as we turned to leave, I noticed something peculiar on the snow-covered ground outside. The footprints. They were enormous, far larger than any humans, with deep impressions that suggested immense weight. They led away from the ranger station, disappearing into the thick forest beyond. "Mark, look at these," I said, pointing to the footprints. "They're too big to be human." He crouched down, examining the tracks closely. "No kidding, these could be from some kind of bear or elk. But they're way too large. We need to get out of here." Before we could make our way back, the storage room door burst open, the howling wind slamming it against the wall. The figure emerged, massive, covered in white fur, its eyes glowing eerily in the darkness. The creature stood at least 8 feet tall, its presence both terrifying and sorrowful. Mark and I froze, our breaths visible in the frigid air. The creature let out a low, mournful growl, its gaze fixed on us with an intensity that sent chills down my spine. I tried to back away, but my legs felt like they were rooted to the spot. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer, my voice barely audible over the storm. The creature took a step forward, the ground trembling beneath its weight. In a voice that resonated deep within my soul, it whispered, "Help us." Mark grabbed my arm, pulling me towards the door. "We need to go. Now." We stumbled back into the ranger station, the creature watching us with a mix of sorrow and frustration. The howling wind intensified, the storm showing no signs of letting up. Desperate to find answers, I rummaged through the old ranger logs we had brought with us, hoping to uncover any information about previous incidents in the area. Hours passed in frantic searching until I came across an entry dated back to the early 1900s. It detailed a series of mysterious disappearances in Donner Pass, reports of a gigantic, shadowy figure seen during severe storms. The entry mentioned that these sightings often preceded the tragic events of the Donner Party, suggesting a connection between the creature and the lost souls of the past. As I read, the storm outside began to wane, the howling wind reducing to a mournful howl that echoed through the ranger station. The creature seemed to understand, its expression softening slightly. "Find us peace," it whispered, its voice carrying a weight of unspoken pain. determined to help. Mark and I realized that the creature was not a beast of malice, but a guardian bound to the tragedies of Donner Pass. The spirits of the lost were searching for closure, their anguish manifesting in the form of this towering figure. We decided to honor their memory, to acknowledge the suffering and offer a gesture of peace. Using the supplies we had, we gathered candles and placed them around the ranger station, creating a circle of light in the encroaching darkness. We spoke words of remembrance and forgiveness, sharing stories of the Donner Party and the lives lost to the unforgiving winter. As we completed the ritual, the atmosphere in the ranger station began to change. The oppressive cold lifted, replaced by a serene warmth that filled the space. The creature stepped back, its eyes reflecting a profound sense of gratitude. "Thank you," it whispered, its form beginning to fade into the misty remnants of the storm. With a final, sorrowful glance, the creature vanished, leaving behind a ranger station that felt lighter, almost alive with a newfound sense of calm. The storm had passed, the snow settling into a peaceful blanket that covered the landscape. The next morning, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden light over Donner Pass. Mark and I packed our gear, the memory of that night etched into our minds forever. As we drove away, the footprints that had led us into the heart of the mystery were gone, replaced by a serene stillness that spoke of closure and acceptance. In the days that followed, our story spread, adding a new layer to the already rich folklore of Donner Pass. Locals shared their own encounters, tales of giant shadows wandering the pass during storms, their presence a reminder of the enduring bond between the living and the dead. Years have passed since that transformative winter, but the memory of the White Guardian remains vivid in my mind. The experience taught me the profound impact of empathy and the importance of honoring those who have been lost. Donner Pass is no longer just a place of historical tragedy, but a testament to the enduring power of compassion and the belief that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope for redemption and peace. Whenever I reflect on that night, the vast expanse of snow-covered peaks and the haunting presence of the White Guardian serve as a reminder that some stories are too powerful to be forgotten. They linger in the winds and whispers of Donner Pass, echoing through the ages as a silent tribute to the bonds that connect us all and the healing that comes from remembering and honoring the tales of those who have been lost. Story number 6. Whispers in the White. I've always been drawn to the untamed wilderness of Canada, where the snow blankets the land in a serene yet unforgiving silence. As an avid hunter and someone who thrives on the solitude that only the vast expanses of nature can provide, the legends of the Wendigo in the remote forests of the Yukon intrigued me. Tales passed down through generations spoke of a malevolent spirit, a monstrous entity born from desperation and cannibalistic survival during the harshest winters. Most dismissed these stories as mere folklore, but there was an unspoken truth in the eyes of those who had dared to venture into its domain. It was late November when my friends Mike, Sarah, and Tom and I set out on our expedition. We were seasoned hunters, each with our own reasons for seeking the thrill of the wild. Mike, ever the skeptic, joined for the challenge, while Sarah sought solace from the chaos of city life. Tom, the quietest of the group, had a fascination with the supernatural, often sharing eerie tales around the campfire. As for me, I was simply looking to escape, to find peace in the solitude of the snow-covered forests. The first few days were everything we had hoped for. We navigated through dense pine forests, the trees towering above us like silent guardians of the wilderness. The crisp air was filled with the scent of pine and the distant call of a lone eagle. Each day, we pushed deeper into the heart of the forest, our camaraderie growing stronger with each passing mile. The nights were cold but comfortable, spent around the campfire sharing stories and enjoying the warmth of friendship. On the 5th day, the weather took an unexpected turn. Dark clouds rolled in from the west, and the temperature plummeted rapidly. Mike checked his weather app, his face growing serious. "We need to head back," he said, concern etched in his voice. But Tom, ever the adventurer, suggested we find shelter and wait out the storm. Reluctantly, we agreed, following a narrow trail that led us to a small clearing surrounded by thick woods. As dusk settled, the first snowflakes began to fall, gentle at first but quickly intensifying into a blinding blizzard. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, the wind howling like a chorus of lost souls. We hurriedly set up our tents, the howling wind battering the fabric with relentless force. Inside, the temperature was unbearably cold, and the fire struggled to keep up with the icy assault outside. Around midnight, a strange feeling settled over the camp. The usual sounds of the forest were drowned out by the storm's fury, replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to press against our very souls. That's when we heard it, the faint sound of growling, low and guttural, echoing through the trees. At first, we dismissed it as the wind playing tricks on our ears, but the growls grew louder, more distinct, sending chills down our spines. "Did you guys hear that?" Sarah whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Mike, trying to remain calm, nodded slowly. "Probably just a wolf or something. Let's not jump to conclusions." But Tom wasn't so sure. He stood up, his eyes scanning the darkness beyond our tent. "Something's out there," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the storm. "Something big." We sat in tense silence, the growling continuing, now accompanied by the sound of heavy footsteps pounding through the snow. The footprints were enormous, far larger than any humans, leaving deep impressions in the freshly fallen snow. They circled our campsite, leading deeper into the forest, then back again, as if taunting us. Mike grabbed his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. "We need to see what's out there," he said, his voice steady despite the fear evident in his eyes. Reluctantly, we followed him, the footprints guiding us into the heart of the storm. The wind whipped around us, making it nearly impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. The growling was now accompanied by an unsettling howl, a sound that resonated deep within my bones, filling me with dread. Suddenly, a shadowy figure emerged from the blinding snow, a towering silhouette covered in thick, white fur. Its eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, reflecting a malevolent intelligence that sent shivers down my spine. The creature stood at least 8 feet tall, its form both humanoid and beastly, a terrifying amalgamation of man and animal. "Run!" Tom hissed, grabbing my arm. "Now!" We turned to flee, but the creature moved with unnatural speed, its massive legs propelling it forward with terrifying grace. The wind seemed to push against us, slowing our escape, as the creature let out a deafening roar that echoed through the forest. We sprinted through the snow, the creature's growls and roars chasing us, the footprints continuing to lead us deeper into the wilderness. Panic overtook reason as we raced back to our campsite, the storm showing no signs of abating. The creature was relentless, its presence a looming threat that kept us on edge. We reached the tent, the fabric flapping violently in the wind, but the door was ripped open by an unseen force, snow and ice battering us from all sides. Inside, we huddled together, our breaths visible in the freezing air. The tent was in disarray, our gear scattered across the snow, torn and trampled. The creature had torn through our sanctuary, leaving behind a scene of chaos and fear. We realized then that escape was futile. We were at the mercy of this monstrous entity. The growling outside grew louder, the creature now just yards away, its glowing eyes fixed on us with an intensity that spoke of ancient malice. In a final act of desperation, I grabbed my camera, snapping a photo of the creature as it loomed over our tent. The flash momentarily illuminated the snow-covered landscape, capturing the true horror of the Wendigo in all its terrifying glory. With a final, bone-chilling roar, the creature retreated into the storm, its presence lingering in the air like a dark omen. Exhausted and traumatized, we knew we had to leave, but the storm had only worsened, making any attempt to escape impossible. As dawn broke, the storm finally began to subside, leaving behind a serene yet haunting stillness. We were found days later by a search party, our gear damaged and our spirits broken. Only I and Tom survived, the others having succumbed to the elements or vanished without a trace. The photographs I took were the only evidence of our encounter, a chilling reminder of the night we faced the Wendigo. In the aftermath, I struggled to comprehend what we had experienced. The locals spoke in hushed tones of the Wendigo, a creature born from desperation and cursed to roam the wilderness, forever searching for sustenance and vengeance. My friends' stories mirrored my own, their eyes haunted by the memories of that night. Years have passed since that fateful expedition, but the memory of the Wendigo remains etched in my mind, a constant reminder of the thin veil between survival and monstrosity. The snow-covered forests of the Yukon hold secrets too dark to be forgotten, their whispers echoing through the trees like the cries of the lost. Whenever a storm rolls in, bringing with it the bitter cold and relentless wind, I find myself drawn back to those haunting memories. The legends of the Wendigo are more than just stories. They are warnings of the darkness that lies within, a testament to the fragility of the human spirit when pushed to its limits. Living with the memory of that night has taught me to respect the wilderness and the legends that protect it. It's a reminder that some boundaries should never be crossed, that the true horror lies not in the creatures that roam the shadows, but in the desperation that drives us to the brink of humanity. And sometimes, when the wind howls through the trees and the snow blankets the land in silence, I catch a glimpse of a towering shadow or hear the distant echo of a sorrowful growl, a silent testament to the bonds that connect us all and the enduring hope for redemption and peace, even in the face of unimaginable horror. Story number 7. Shadows over Dyatlov Pass. I've always been fascinated by the mysteries that the natural world holds, especially those shrouded in darkness and ice. The legend of Dyatlov Pass in the Ural Mountains of Russia has long intrigued me, a place where a group of experienced hikers met a tragic and inexplicable end, their bodies found scattered in bizarre circumstances. Drawn by an insatiable curiosity, I decided to embark on a journey to uncover the truth behind the haunting events of 1959, hoping to piece together the fragments of a puzzle that has baffled investigators for decades. The plan was simple: retrace the steps of the ill-fated Dyatlov group, delve into the frozen wilderness, and document my findings, accompanied by a small team of fellow adventurers: Elena, a seasoned mountaineer; Victor, a local guide with extensive knowledge of the Ural region; and Mikhail, a researcher specializing in unexplained phenomena. We set out in early December, just as the first snow began to blanket the rugged terrain. Our expedition began smoothly, the crisp winter air invigorating us as we navigated through dense forests and across frozen rivers. The Ural Mountains, with their imposing peaks and treacherous paths, demanded respect and caution. Each day brought new challenges, from blinding snowstorms to bone-chilling temperatures that tested our endurance and resolve. By the third day, we reached the vicinity of the Dyatlov Pass, a narrow corridor nestled between towering cliffs and perpetually cloaked in snow. The area was eerily quiet, the silence only broken by the distant howl of the wind and the crunch of our boots on the icy ground. We set up camp near the spot where the original group had pitched their tent, the site marked by a few scattered belongings and the faint traces of their passage. As night fell, the temperature plummeted, and a fierce blizzard swept through the pass with relentless fury. The wind howled like a chorus of tormented spirits, whipping snow into blinding drifts that obscured our vision. We huddled together in our tents, sharing stories and trying to keep our spirits up despite the mounting tension. Around midnight, the storm reached its peak, the wind's wails turning into something almost sentient, as if the mountains themselves were alive and breathing. It was then that Elena awoke with a start, her eyes wide with fear. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. We strained to listen, the storm's rage threatening to drown out any coherent sound. But beneath the howl, there was something else, a faint, rhythmic pounding, like heavy footsteps pounding against the earth. Victor's face paled as he grabbed his flashlight, pointing it towards the sound. "It's coming from the ridge," he said, his voice barely audible over the storm. Determined to uncover the source of the noise, we unzipped our tents and stepped into the tempest. The wind whipped around us, stinging our faces and making it nearly impossible to see. The footprints were the first clue, massive, deep impressions etched into the fresh snow, leading away from our camp and disappearing into the blinding white. "Could it be a bear?" Mikhail suggested, though his tone lacked conviction. We all knew the stories of wolves and other predators in these parts, but something about the footprints felt different, more deliberate, more sinister. We followed the trail, our flashlights cutting through the storm as we navigated the treacherous terrain. The pounding footsteps grew louder, more insistent, as if whatever or whoever it was drawing nearer with each passing moment. The air grew colder, our breaths visible in the freezing night air. As the sense of dread intensified, suddenly, a shadowy figure materialized on the ridge, a colossal being covered in thick, white fur, its eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. The creature stood at least 10 feet tall, its presence both terrifying and otherworldly. It let out a low, guttural growl that resonated deep within our souls, sending chills down our spines. "Elena, Mikhail, go back," Victor shouted, his voice cracking with fear, but it was too late. The creature advanced towards us with unnatural speed, each step sending shockwaves through the snow-covered ground. We turned to flee, but the storm seemed to conspire against us, the wind pushing us back, making escape nearly impossible. In a desperate attempt to defend ourselves, Victor raised his rifle, but the creature was too fast, too powerful. It swung its massive arms, and we barely dodged the blow that sent a wave of snow cascading over us. Panic set in as we realized that survival was now a matter of life and death. We stumbled through the storm, the creature's growls echoing behind us, never far enough to catch us, but close enough to instill a paralyzing fear. The footprints we had followed were now littered with signs of a struggle: broken branches, trampled snow, and the occasional splash of blood that quickly froze in the cold. Just when hope seemed lost, we reached a narrow crevice between two cliffs, barely wide enough to squeeze through. Clambering into the tight space, we huddled together, our breaths coming in rapid gasps as the storm raged outside. The creature loomed at the entrance, its glowing eyes fixed on us with a hunger that bordered on madness. For what felt like hours, we waited in the darkness, the storm gradually subsiding and the creature's growls fading into the distance. When morning finally broke, the sky was clear, the sun casting a pale light over the frozen landscape. We cautiously emerged from our hiding place, the footprints leading back towards our camp now gone without a trace. Exhausted and traumatized, we made our way back to the remnants of the Dyatlov Pass campsite. The devastation mirrored the stories we had read, our belongings torn apart, the tent shredded by the storm's fury. But there was no sign of the original hikers, only the chilling memories of their tragic fate. Determined to leave the wilderness behind, we packed our gear and began the arduous journey back to civilization. The encounter with the creature had left us shaken, our minds grappling with the reality of what we had witnessed. The legends of the Wendigo, a monstrous being born from desperation and cannibalistic survival, seemed all too real now, their dark myth entwined with our own harrowing experience. Upon returning home, we shared our story with others, the photographs we had managed to take serving as haunting evidence of the creature's existence. Skeptics dismissed our account as hallucinations brought on by the extreme conditions, but those who listened could see the fear etched in our eyes and the truth in our voices. Years have passed since that fateful expedition, but the memory of Dyatlov Pass and the shadows that haunt it remain vivid in my mind. The experience taught me the profound impact of nature's fury and the thin line that separates myth from reality. The Ural Mountains hold secrets that defy explanation, their echoes lingering in the winds and whispers of the frozen landscape. Whenever a storm rolls in and the wind howls through the snow-covered peaks, I can't help but feel a lingering sense of unease. a reminder of the night we faced the Wendigo and survived to tell the tale. The legend of Dyatlov Pass continues to captivate and terrify, a testament to the enduring power of fear and the mysteries that lie hidden in the heart of the wilderness. Living with the memory of that night has instilled in me a deep respect for the untamed beauty of nature and the legends that protect it. It's a reminder that some stories are too powerful to be forgotten, their echoes lingering in the winds and whispers of the mountains. And as long as we remember and honor the tales of those who came before us, the spirits of the past will continue to guide us. Their whispers a haunting yet beautiful melody that echoes through the ages. And sometimes, when the snow begins to fall and the wind picks up just right, I catch a glimpse of a towering shadow or hear the distant echo of a growl, a silent testament to the bonds that connect us all and the enduring hope for redemption and peace. Even amidst the most unforgiving storms,